know you heard me on the radio. Flexing, she loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K. I know you heard me on the radio. Flexing, she loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K.
Rutgers Scarlet Knights fans, welcome to another episode of Night Watch. I am your host, Larry K. If you're listening on the audio version on every major podcast platform, we apologize that this is the first time you've heard us in a while. I did a reaction video to the Wisconsin loss, and it was just on my phone. I didn't even feel the need to belabor the point of what we look like and what this team was headed toward. I didn't want to burden you audio listeners with that, but I am back this week, and we appreciate your listenership. Everybody on YouTube, we obviously definitely appreciate your listenership, and welcome to all the new subscribers. The channel is growing, and with growth will come more bells, whistles, coverage, and things from your host here, Larry K. I'm working on some things behind the scenes to get even more off the ground, but unfortunately, to go with our football offseason, we are headed rapidly into thinking about our basketball offseason. The basketball team falls 68-50 at home to Purdue, and it's just really at this point, I don't know, acceptance has set in for me. And I think it maybe set in a while ago for me, but at this point, it's certainly definitely set in. I have accepted this. Apathy is certainly well settled in my soul, heart, and brain right now with Rutgers basketball, and I don't feel the pain anymore, to be quite honest with you. So here we go. I mean, interestingly, in this game, you look at the field goal percentage, where we really got hurt. But let's get to that in a minute. It's not like Purdue blew the roof off as far as scoring. A lot of this team's problems this year have been centered on the fact that we haven't been able to defend. Now, Purdue was killing us with the pick and roll, and they were getting to the rim and, making shots when they needed to. But I saw real stretches in that game, which is what's been so frustrating with this program in a lot of ways. There were stretches in that game where Purdue wasn't converting. They weren't getting shots to fall every time, and our defense didn't look terrible at points, especially earlier in the game. But we just could not score. Just bad looks, bad shots. Couldn't convert when we had the shots. Just terrible, sloppy ball. So if you look at it, Purdue was only 4 for 24 on three-pointers. They shot 16% from three. Rutgers actually 7 of 23, 30% from three. We were 81% on our free throws. Purdue 50%. They really struggled there. Total rebounds 36-34 in Rutgers' favor. We had 10 offensive. They only had 8. Defensive was tied at 26. But when you get down to it and you start looking for what was going on, Purdue had 7 steals to our 3. We had 16 turnovers to Purdue's 8. And field goal percentage, which was what I was getting at earlier, 32% from the field for Rutgers, 50% from the field for Purdue. And we only hit 17 of 52 from the field. Purdue 28 of 56. So there's your game right there. Just sloppy play from Rutgers. Again, no semblance of an idea of who this team is. Again, a lot of ill-advised shots. Again, no cohesion, no plan for who these guys are, what they're going to be. And a lot of greediness with the ball. There was a credit to the Rutgers message board, the Night Report, the Rivals site. Somebody pointed out that at one point Durkak had the ball. Somerville's maybe vocalizing to him, maybe saying pass the ball. Durkak, instead drains a shot from the foul line, and then he goes back a few more times and doesn't convert. And this has been just an ongoing situation with a lot of players on this team. And the only one in my honest opinion, the only player that deserves to be selfish with the ball and just take it no matter what is Dylan Harper. Nobody else has shown that they can consistently score, and that includes Ace Bailey. You know, he throws up a lot of magical-looking shots, but he throws up a lot of those shots that don't go in. And I said this earlier in the season, that it's fun to watch. I said this. Kind of a Harlem Globetrotters type team, I guess, for a play or two. But unless you're going to start playing as a team and thinking in the best interest of the team, we're not going to go very far as a team. And this team has completely devolved into this ISO acrobatic, let me see how fancy or how unbelievable I can make this shot. And now they're just not falling very frequently. And it's just getting worse and worse as we devolve here. Losing by 18 at home is a joke. It's embarrassing. And I was thinking about this because apparently we were catching some stray bullets at the Notre Dame-Penn State football game when Notre Dame started chanting, some of the fans, we're not Rutgers or something. First of all, I'd like to remind Notre Dame that even our putrid basketball team beat them this year in basketball. But I started thinking about the we're not Rutgers chant, the fact we're in the Big Ten with all these state institutions. And Rutgers may have this name that's unique to itself. It may have started as a namesake, smaller university or college. But Rutgers is a state university of the state of New Jersey. And the fact that we got 2 5-stars, celebrities coming to games, all this hype, and we are downright terrible. To couple with a lot of the other nonsense that's happened to Rutgers athletics over the years, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing, not just as an alumni for me, it's embarrassing to the state. And the state has enough baggage. This is really unfortunate that this basketball team is this bad. Now, you might have seen it coming. I think some of us were wondering, as we built up to this season, and I'm not just talking about this current offseason, the previous offseason. As we built up to this season, even a year ago, 2 years ago, when it started to take shape that Dylan Harper might come here, Ace Bailey committed, there was so much hype, and a lot of the hype kept centering on, that I heard anyway, where these guys were going to go in the NBA draft. Well, look, he's going to go 1. He might go 3. He might go 2. Who cares? I never quite understood why that had an implication per se for the Rutgers basketball team that was going to have these guys on the court for a year. It kept being so much about the draft status. Okay, that's fun. Great. But what's going to happen for the few months between the commitment and the draft? What are we going to do then? What are they going to do for Rutgers? And I was wondering because last year I kept saying that the most important aspect of the season last year was to develop a culture. You can go back and watch my videos. The most important aspect of last year I thought was to develop a culture and have a team for these 2 freshmen to join so that there was already a foundation there so that they could do something. But instead of having a team, not only was last year's team abysmal and an absolute disaster and a mess, it was jettisoned. And we got almost all new players this year. But let's be honest, I talked about setting a foundation, setting the tone, setting a culture last year. And sadly, they did set a foundation. They did set a tone. They did set a culture last year. And it's carried into this year. And that is what these freshmen have stepped into. And it's disorganized, a mess, offensive iso ball oriented, lack of good defense. And that's what the culture is. And I was wondering for a couple of years, how were we going to capitalize on these 2 guys? Now, props to Jerry Carino, who wrote a piece, and he also was on The Scarlet Faithful with Aaron Brightman recently. It's a great interview if you haven't checked it out yet. But Carino wrote basically, how Steve Peichel is a guy who took guys who had upside And he would bring these guys in. They were going to be 4-year players, 3-year players, 5-year players. And he would do one-on-one coaching sessions with them to teach them certain defensive techniques. And he would spend time individually with the players, and the staff would spend time individually with the players to teach them certain defensive techniques. And then once they were well honed individually, he would start teaching team defensive concepts. And therefore, you'd have 5 guys who were well attuned to his defensive philosophies and abilities individually, playing as a team and getting plenty of work doing that, and being able to do that seamlessly once you got to out of conference and then once you got to conference play. And obviously, doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that that level of cohesion as a team does not happen overnight. You can't simply coach guys individually for a week and then coach them as a team for a week or 2 weeks and expect them to execute well. So the way that he would coach, this would be a multi-year process, right? You know, the first year, or when these guys were young, they wouldn't be as good, and they wouldn't be as good as a team or individually. And then the second year, they'd progress. And the third year, they'd probably be hitting the ground running. And then you'd have these finished products. It was much like Shiano always says, it was a developmental program, in the sense that you were bringing in guys and you were developing them. Now, this isn't to give Coach Peichel a pass at all, because I think he's failed miserably this year in terms of, you know, roster construction, as well as how he was going to use those pieces. And that is a constant feedback loop, and that goes hand in hand. That's not one or the other, right? You know, when you're looking for the guys, you should have a plan. And when you get them, you should execute that plan. And it has to be a constant back and forth. You should know why you're bringing a guy in and how he's going to fit into the philosophy, and then be able to implement that philosophy once you have his skill set. And I don't think either one of those things were properly done here. I'm not in the locker room. I'm not a veteran basketball coach at the D1 level, but this is what I'm seeing as somebody who is, you know, I analyze things for a living, and I take a look at things, a good, hard, logical look at them. And that's something that I do know. And I did play the game, obviously not at a high level, but I did play it for many years. So I think there was a failure there. But talking simply first about these guys, it seemed to me, starting a few years ago, that when Peichel kind of knew that these 2 guys were coming, the philosophy kind of changed to, okay, let's be open, let's run the floor, you know, let's get this offensive mentality in here where guys can shoot from all over the court, and, you know, we're just out more firepower than everybody. And he went full speed ahead. I understand that environment dictates it. And NIL and the 1-year transfer, you could transfer all these times, and you don't have to sit, and NIL plays such a role, and everybody's getting paid. And I understand that part of it was environmentally dictated. But Pike tried to go all in on that philosophy and think that he could build a roster on the fly that way, and because these guys are one and done players, that he could construct an entire roster really in 1 year. And I don't know what he thought we would get out of it, but we've seen freshmen come to our program, and we've seen freshmen at other programs, highly touted or not, who are freshmen, and there are certain aspects of the game that they're not mastering, especially in a conference like the Big Ten, which still plays, you know, college basketball, team basketball in a lot of ways. There's some things that freshmen are not going to be able to step right into and capitalize on. And so you need some foundation. And I know there's a lot of hate out there for a lot of players that didn't pan out. And I understand, you know, many people were happy to see Paul McCahey go. He had a rough season before he left, and there was a lot of controversy around certain things. And he wanted to come back, and Pike said no, you know, at the last minute. And people cheered it at the time. Cliff Amore, you know, was he the polished superstar we wanted when we first got him to commit here? Maybe not, but was he a foundational piece who gave us something on the defensive side, who gave a presence at the 5 position, who could convert at least at the rim, even if he was dunking to do it, at least more often than now. And was he somebody who's playing college basketball for 4 or 5 years? Yeah. I hear a lot of, Reber was a failure. Was Reber a starting 5 guy in the Big Ten? No, but did he come in and hit some meaningful shots and play some, even if it was small minutes, meaningful minutes for us when we were a decent team? Yeah. Was Woolfolk, a superstar, starting 5 or 4? No. Did he give us some serious game? Could he play a little bit? Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying these guys are great, but what I'm saying is we let these guys go. We didn't develop them for 4 years and keep them like some of these other guys who came in not as highly touted and then wound up being pretty good players. I understand that within that list, there's nobody who's a Geo Baker, Ron Harper Jr., Caleb McConnell, and that's a big problem with Peichel. He didn't recruit the starting, really good Big Ten starters and develop them. But he got some guys, and we kind of, not only did we kind of jump ship on them pretty quickly to bring in guys from lower levels that we thought were magically going to learn these concepts and be able to play in this system right away, and they aren't. Not only did we bring in guys who Peichel and the staff had no clue how to really use them offensively to get them the looks they needed, and that goes as far back as I would even say Cam Spencer and some of these other guys who, they probably could have done even better here had we been better on the offensive side of the ball as far as conceptually, and had felt they needed to move on to develop that aspect of their game. And I also think that's a big reason why Cliff felt he needed to move on, in addition to maybe a payday and maybe the staff thinking it was time to move on. And I understand all that. But there's a lot of aspects here that when you really break it down, they were an issue. And I think it started when the pivot environmentally happened, but also when we thought we would get these 2 young men to be one and done. And when you have enough notice, you can come up with a plan to best utilize them and maximize their year here. And I think what we chose to do to maximize their year here, go change philosophies, go all out with trying to build an offensive roster of a lot of mixed pieces, wasn't the right approach. The right approach probably would have been to stick with guys you've been developing, get them to be veterans, get them to improve, bring in a couple pieces, or maybe pool the resources you use to get 3 or 4 offensive pieces into 1 or 2 more stout offensive pieces, like maybe a true 5 or something. Maybe guys who were better defensively, and maybe a 5 who was good defensively. And I think it's just disheartening that with all the hype and all the hoopla and all the dreaming that took place in anticipation of this year, that I could see a while away that it might not be well executed, and that I didn't seem like we really had that culture or base or foundation in place for when these guys got here. And I think as a basketball fan, I'll tell you right now, I'm not an NBA fan anymore. I mean, I was an NBA fan when I was a kid, and you could call me a get off my lawn type guy, whatever. I like hockey. I love pro football. I love the NHL. I'll watch baseball here, and I used to be a much bigger fan when I was younger. But the NBA has devolved, in my opinion, into a league where you don't play defense. Everybody's trying to hit threes. 1 through 5 on the floor is a shooter. There's no defense until the playoffs. Every score is above 100 every game. And I lost interest in it in a lot of ways. And the society in general, I know I'm digressing a little into more philosophical, abstract stuff here, but the society in general has gotten to a place where team is secondary to me. And you're going to go out there in the NBA and shoot a bunch. And you play 1 year in college. Like if somebody is an NBA player, maybe they should go right to the NBA or right to a G League type thing. Or if not, spend a couple years in college. Because here's my thing. And Dylan Harper is a legacy. Dylan Harper is an excellent player. Dylan Harper, I think, would be a very good college basketball player. It's really unfortunate that Dylan Harper got sick and that took a lot out of him. And it's obvious that Dylan is sick and has been sick for the last few week or so. And honestly, I think if Dylan was healthy, we might have had a better fighting chance in conference so far, and we might be having a different conversation. I don't know that that's true, because some of these games, I don't know that Dylan moves the needle. But, especially Indiana, Ace goes off, and props to Ace there. I mean, I don't know how much Dylan could have added. He probably just would have taken some points from Ace maybe. But the last couple games maybe would have been a different story. I don't know. And Ace Bailey, I love the fact that he came here, and I wish the young man nothing but the best. He's a very talented player. But in a world where you're basically stopping here and it's an afterthought because you're headed to the NBA, and the style you played at AAU and the style you played in high school is going to go a little bit better into the style you play in the NBA, and Big Ten basketball is a less than a year, a few months stopover for you. I don't know that it works. I don't know that it was ever going to succeed very well. If, and I had family members at the game yesterday. It was the first game this year. Saying, Harper's got this attitude and that, like in a positive way. And I was like, that's great. But 6-7 years ago, when you're talking about his brother or somebody and he's a freshman and he has a certain attitude or a certain skill set, you're really excited about him because you're going to have him for 3-4 years. And you're excited about the prospect he's going to be and the potential he has for your school and your team. But when they're here for a few months, none of that really matters. Because you're not going to see them develop. You're not going to realize the full potential of what they could be because they're only here very briefly. And so what's the payoff for the fan? And in this modern era where it's me, then all of a sudden you had these rules. The transfer rules were relaxed, and everybody, I think one of the most unfortunate things is human beings are going to corrupt every and anything all the time. And it's so disheartening, especially in this society. NIL was supposed to be name, image, and likeness, meaning a person should benefit from their own name, image, and likeness, i.e., if Geo Baker goes to a mall somewhere in Jersey and he wants to sign autographs for money, he should be able to do that because his own name, image, and likeness is what's selling, and he owns the rights to that, and he should. If they're going to put him in a commercial, he should get paid for it. If they're going to run a camp, they should get paid for it. That's what it was intended, or most of us thought it was intended to be. But it was ultimately right away corrupted. And now it's just pay for play. NIL, it's absurd that it's called NIL because you can get somebody who's really nobody knows except within the recruiting world. And all of a sudden he's getting a huge bag. And that's the same in the pros. In sports, it's not about the team or winning championships so much as it is about getting the bag. He got the bag. I want him to get the bag. All that nonsense. And I think it is personally, but that's my philosophy. I'm getting old. And, they say that old people are always raging at the youth since the beginning of time, the beginning of recorded history, and we're not unique. We're probably not unique, but it's my turn to rage, and I'm going to rage, okay? But as we got into this me society, as you get the style changing in the pros and the NBA, and then you get this NIL 1-year deal, transfer, whatever, it was just a perfect storm for a guy like Steve Peichel, who was more a traditional college basketball coach, to really be out of his element and really, I don't think, know what to do in this modern era. And I'm just saying, as a fan, you get two of the best players in the country from high school who are going to be two of the top players in the NBA, and one of them in Dylan Harper is one of the better players in college basketball when he's healthy. And we don't have much to show for it because the other guy, who's a great high school player and probably going to be a great NBA player, or at least a great NBA prospect, is not a great college player, actually. He's had good moments. He's had great shots. I don't know that this type of game suits him. And part of that could be a misnomer because, props to Aaron Brightman. Again, I was listening to his show following this game and said, Ace isn't getting to the rim. He's not using other elements or dimensions of his game. He's not getting to the rim. He's not doing the diversified skill set. He's not showing it the way we thought he would. He's basically shooting mid-range shots a lot. Now, he's been hitting some threes, and he's obviously a very talented shooter. But he's doing a lot of mid-range acrobatics instead of forcing teams to play him in a multitude of ways, and it's not great. So it seemed like it was a perfect storm for this thing kind of to not work for Rutgers, and it's a shame because I don't know where this program goes from here, and I don't know as a basketball fan what you want to see going from here. I got to be honest, I'd rather see some of these other Big Ten teams. Purdue's 12-4. They play as a team. Yeah, they had some talented guys that they got. But if I'm Steve Peichel, after this year's over, if I'm Steve Peichel, I'm going towards the Greg Schiano model of the new frontier in sports. I'm going to recruit guys that love the game of basketball. And I'm not saying that Ace and Dylan and Durkak and Martini and Hayes and, Acuff. I'm not saying they don't love the game of basketball, but I'm saying you go get the gritty kids that fit who you are as a coach, fit who you are as a culture, who want to be in the same place more likely than not, and you're never going to guarantee it. But if you look at Greg Schiano and how his team's been, he's been pretty good at getting those kids. Now, he's got other issues. We talked about the football season. We'll talk about the transfers, which we'll talk about. We'll do a football show soon to touch base in the offseason. But you can find those kids that you think you have a better chance of staying longer than some other kids. And I would focus my NIL on retention and develop the kids the way you used to develop the kids for 4 years. And concentrate on retaining them instead of trying to get the shiny transfer or the shiny recruit. And build your teams the way you used to build them. And in this conference, I think it will make for a more entertaining product, a more competitive product. And I'm cool with making the tournament and seeing if we could make a run if the seeding shakes out in our favor. If we had beat Houston, who knows where that team would have gone. And that team didn't have 2 5-star NBA lotto picks. They didn't need that. I think that's the only way for Coach Peichel to survive going forward. You keep a guy like Grant on the team, you surround him with guys like himself, and you build. Now, a guy like Lathan Somerville, ton of upside. Is he the kind of guy who's going to stick around for 3 years and develop? I don't know. We'll see. But you get guys who want to play and want to stay, and you do your best to retain them. It's not a guarantee, but you do your best to retain them. Because other than that, I don't think Coach Peichel is going to do very well in the new era. So if you're Rutgers, you either go all in on that philosophy with Peichel, which I think most are saying there's no way out. He's not leaving after this year unless it's on his own accord. Or if it doesn't work out in that regard with Peichel, or you can't figure it out, you got to get a guy in here who knows how to work this NIL system and build a team on the fly and can develop a team very quickly in a year and proceed with this, year in, year out, different team approach. But as a fan, unless you're very good, I think it's going to be hard to consistently stay interested in a sport where every single year are brand new people who are mercenaries getting paid some of them getting paid an obscene amount of money. And unless they're producing, they're not going to be students for 3-4 years. They're not going to graduate with a degree from the same university as you. They don't have the same level of allegiance to the school or the program. And where's the incentive for fans to care about 1-year mercenaries getting paid obscene amounts of money unless they win? But you get a coach who can win that way, and then you have a chance. But as of right now, looking at this as a Rutgers fan, you got the best recruit you could get. You used it. Now, look, you didn't have unlimited NIL. I understand, and that's been alluded to in several places. But you had enough to figure out how to use it one way or another. Maybe, like I said, you concentrated on 2 kids instead of spreading out amongst 4 or 5. Maybe you get better pieces. But we got the 5 stars. We got the holy grail of recruiting. And this is what we are left with. And whatever you want to hang the blame on the coach, you want to hang the blame on the way these guys play defense or don't, you want to hang the blame on the environment, whatever you want to hang the blame on, it's just not rewarding as somebody who covers or follows the team. And something has got to either change, or we got to get used to the fact that this is what we are, or this is what it is. I don't know. But there are ways to move forward here. And I think after this season is put to bed, it's time for, the athletic department and Steve Peichel to take a good hard look and maybe go back to the coach that he was and doing things the way he wanted to do it as best he can, because you can't do it. You can only do so much in this modern environment, but you can do the best you can. And I understand you don't turn down, especially a legacy and then an excellent player, an ace. You don't turn them down, obviously, and I'm not advocating for that. That's hindsight's 20/20, and I'm not saying that. And it's really not on those 2 who are still giving us their all. I mean, Bailey had 17 points, 7 rebounds, 1 assist. It's not like these guys aren't still giving their all and playing their ass off, and they haven't given us a lot. But I just don't know if the payoff is worth it at this point watching this team. Somerville only 2 points, 3 rebounds, 21 minutes. Acuff 10 points, 5 rebounds. And I got a question. Why weren't Acuff and Grant playing more early in the year? I know Acuff had the injury. But Grant, now he's playing. He's getting all this run, 15 minutes, and he wasn't getting it early in the season. Is that because you thought you were adapting to the new philosophy and he was a kid you wanted to develop for after this magical run we were supposed to have? You should have played him. And maybe he's the type of kid you want on the team. Maybe you keep him. You divert your money to him to keep him instead of diverting it to transfers who may not fit in for 1 year because you don't have time to coach them on the way you want them to play. And they don't have time to get to know each other and know the team and have a stable culture of cohesion. So it's hard to cover a team that's going nowhere, but I do it for you guys. I mean, I love covering Rutgers sports, but it's not as fun when it's this bad, and it's not even like we're fighting for the bubble at this point. I mean, we're just one of the worst teams in the Big Ten right now, and we've had a very, very disappointing season, and we're playing very uninspired basketball. And whether it's the coaches, the players, whatever it is, it's a huge disappointment. And there's plenty of philosophical blame and literal blame and things to go around. But it's definitely a huge disappointment, and I don't think it's so would have been so hard to see coming. And I think some people had legitimate questions. I was at a tailgate at the football game this year, and they were saying, "Well, I can't wait for basketball." I was like, "Yeah, but what about we don't have a 5?" They're like, "Well, we can sneak out of Big Ten play and get in the tournament. I think we're going to match up well with the more guard heavy teams that will play in the tourney." It's like, yeah, but there were some issues with this team you could see coming, and when we lost to A&M, and a lot of people were celebrating, "Oh, but it was fun. We went down to the wire with the number 20 team." I'm like, yeah, but if you want to try to go to the Sweet 16, and I'm not somebody who ever thought, so don't accuse me of having inflated expectations. I never thought this was going to be a Final Four team. But I was hoping to get to the second weekend, get to Sweet 16. And if you're going to be in this top 16, you probably got to beat number 20. And I didn't think you had to beat them, but the way we were losing and just not getting the wins, I was like, at some point you got to get the wins because you only got 1 year. If this was a 3-year, even a 2-year build with these guys and we were going to have them, then I'd be really excited about a tough loss to the number 20 team in the country. But if this was the season and the only season, you can't be happy with that. And I started to see some issues even back then. The first game Ace played, I think it was against Monmouth. I was there. I got to see his first college game, and that'll be great in years if he's a great NBA star. But I was already worried, the team kind of had something going with Dylan as the leader, and Ace came in. I was like, how is this going to work as a team, spreading the ball around, whatnot? He had some pretty shots in that game, but it's never really hit the ground running the way you would like it to, and you should have had some legitimate concerns even back then. So I think there was a lot of, even if you had an issue like, well, they're freshmen. Well, how do they fit in? Well, this team hasn't looked good last year the way Pico was trying to shift the philosophy. We've had freshmen come in. I mean, it started with Gavin Griffiths coming in, and you thought he was going to be some great piece to this awesome team once he was joined by these 2 talented freshmen because he was so highly touted. And it started with him just really not being good last year for us. And then him, as soon as he wasn't great right off the bat, he wants to move on. And everybody wants him to move on because it's a one and done. Quick. Me. I'm going to get a payday. I better shine this year because I'm getting an NIL deal that comes spring, either from you or somebody else. I better shine because I'm going to the NBA. Whatever. It started with Griffiths, and then you're like, okay, well, we didn't. Already we don't have one piece we thought we'd have that didn't pan out. Already you lost a bunch of other guys who you thought were developmentally in the program, and they're gone. Now you're getting these 2 guys. It's like a slow car crash you see coming. And everybody is telling you, don't worry about it. We're going to be great. Look at these kids are so good that it's going to be a memorable once-in-a-lifetime season. Just strap in and enjoy the ride. The ticket reps, you're going to be able to sell them. You better buy them. We can justify the price hike because this is going to be a once-in-a-life. You got to see this. Really? I understand the optimism from some because of how good these kids were, but some of them it was gaslighting. So it's like I kind of was skeptical, but I got into the hype because everybody told me to get into it. And it's like, no. This isn't how you build winning basketball teams. And this staff and this program was not built to make a magical run with a one-and-done type roster with a bunch of transfers. It just is what it is, and something's got to change. But we will continue covering Rutgers basketball. That was my soliloquy. The way I cover this team is a little more wax poetic. It's a little more op-ed, editorializing, and that's what I do, and that's why I hope you tune in to Night Watch. In some ways, that's the angle you're getting from this channel that is maybe in its own lane compared to some others. I greatly appreciate your listenership. I greatly appreciate you taking the time to listen to me whine, as they say. And that band's first album is kind of how I feel about how this season has gone. So it's all I can say. Please hit that subscribe button if you do enjoy listening. And what else do we have to do now but engage in abstract philosophical ideas about the state of college basketball, since our season is on life support and they've just run in with the electric thing to say, clear! And I don't know if we're waking up. So, UCLA, it would have been nice if it was a weekend game. Could at least go with the kids, with the wife, hang out. But no, Big Ten scheduling. Thanks so much. It's a Monday again. A lot of fun. So you can't even enjoy that in the same way. Maybe I'll show up. Maybe I won't. But hit subscribe. Remember, we're available on every major platform as a podcast audio. If you're on the audio, come on over to YouTube, hit subscribe. Night Watch will continue to provide you with content. We will have a football touch base kind of episode soon. We'll continue to talk basketball. We may even delve into women's basketball with all the craziness headed over there. And the more support we get, the more subscribers, the more we can cover, the more we can do. And like I said, there's some other stuff in the works. Maybe you guys will be getting some more writing from me. Just put it that way. Excited about what's to come. Proud to be a Rutgers guy. Proud to be a Rutgers fan. Proud to call all of you my colleagues in this thing. Night Watch family. But we are going through tough times. Enjoy your weekends. Enjoy it doing something other than worrying about Rutgers sports right now. And I will talk to you all very soon. Larry K is out.